Okay, so we're going to be looking at stuff we covered today. So it's Monday night. We're going to be looking at the texturing and bringing into Unreal and that kind of stuff. We're going to start off by looking at some very, very basic texturing techniques. Pretty much everything I've covered in that initial basic intro to Substance Painter video anyway. So we're going to go back over it. And we're going to start making stuff for the actual hotel using our references from the Corinthia Budapest. We're going to start, we're going to start making things in that vein. We obviously don't have to do things exactly one-to-one, but we're going to make things in that style. So light, marble mixed with what looks like granite, the pillars and all that stuff, we're going to base off that. So, I've got my scene here. This currently has no textures applied to it, unlike the one I've obviously been using in class. It's pretty much the same layout though, but it's just nothing's actually got any materials applied to it just yet. So, I know I'm going to be bringing in some textures eventually into this scene, so what I'm going to do is make a folder for my textures. And with this, I'm going to start to be more organized with stuff. So, instead of just dumping all my textures into one place, I'm actually going to start to make subfolders for all the little bits of it. Because we could end up with hundreds of textures at the end of this, so we don't really want that. So I'm going to make a folder. I'm going to collect textures. And then I'm going to go into that folder. And then make an environment folder. Environment. And then inside that one, I'm going to make a marble floor. Or in fact, I'm going to do flooring. Floor. If I was doing this for a full game, then I'd probably do more of a specific breakdown. So I might have multiple floor materials depending on my project. But for this, I'm just going to have a floor. So my floor text is going to go in here. I'm probably going to have, I reckon, 3 or 4 different flat floor types. And then I'm going to have things for like my stairs and that kind of jazz. So my texture is going to go in there eventually. Cool. So my Unreal scene set up. So I'm going to Control-Shift-S to basically do a global save of my Unreal. I'm going to come into Maya and I'm going to set up a plane to take into Substance Painter to texture on. While I'm here, I'm just going to make sure that I've got a good understanding about what my UVs look like. So I've got some basic UV stuff here, some basic geometry. And what I'm really only concerned about now is the flooring and the walls. Anything else I'm not really bothered about because we're going to look at that as we get to it. So, ideally what I want, not even ideally, what I want for this is a big square texture. Like this, big square UV. So that I can take whatever I produce inside on Substance Painter and apply that to this. Or for ones that are like a half like this, I can see that I've got this object selected and it's 4 meters by 2 meters, which is technically half of this vertically. So I need to fix that up. And I got this one, which is, this one's correct because it's obviously 2 meters by 4 meters. So that one's correct. This one's obviously correct. This one, in this case, what I'm going to do is bring the UVs down to be a quarter section down at the bottom quarter here. Because this, for now, I'm going to take this as being basically a small version of this, so I still want the same texture size. So what I'm going to do is just grab the UVs at the top, hold X, and then just drag them down so that they're at the halfway point. And then grab the UVs on the left, oh sorry, the right, and then hold X and drag them to the middle, like this. So now, this is really a quarter version of this. And this one here, well, same thing, I just need to drag it over to the left from the right. So I'll grab all the UVs on the right hand side. Make sure I'm in UV mode, obviously, because we're dealing with UVs. Hold X, I'm just going to drag them to the middle. There we go. And if I turn my checkerboard on, like there, I should have perfect squares on each of them. So that's perfect squares, perfect squares, perfect squares. There you go, perfect squares, and perfect squares. Awesome. And then I can do the exact same thing on these as well. So if I do want to do some walling, I can do that. So hold X, snap them like that. Ooh, there you go. So this one, they can see there that this is squashed because the UVs here don't reference this. So then I just grab that, hold X, drag it to the middle. And my big wall's all good. My little wall there. Well, I need that to be, again, that quarter size. So I'm going to bring all the UVs so that the UV is just in this bottom left quarter here. So, boop. And boop. Now, because I want to snap to the grid, I just need to hold X. And similar to when we build stuff, I want the root point to be in the bottom left. It's the same, I want the root point to be in the bottom left. So I'm not going to have, for now, I'm not going to have any of the UVs like over here. Cool. So they're set up to be, you know, sorted out later on if I want, when I want to. So let's move out of the way. But what I'm going to take into Substance Painter is just a flat plane. A flat plane. Unfortunately, Substance Painter doesn't have just a basic flat plane for it to texture on, so we have to take in our own, which is kind of stupid. So what I'm going to do is press my plane, hold shift. Is this important that we do this? I need to hold shift because obviously that's going to make a perfect square version and it's going to give me perfect square UVs. If you just drag out a shape like that, you can see that the UVs are not correct because this isn't a square. Even if I go and change the settings in the channel box to be a square, that's still not a square. So it's important that we initially drag it out by holding shift to make a perfect square. Then we can change the sizes to be, you know, a 400 by 400 or whatever. So I can change that to be 400 by 500. Really, technically, it doesn't really matter how big this is physically because all we want is the texture size. But just to be, you know, just so we're practicing our good practice, I'm going to make sure that this is in the middle of the world. It's 400 by 400, and we initially made it by holding shift and dragging out. Because then that'll give us... sorry, I got a bit of chew in the back of my throat. Because then that'll give us UVs that are perfectly square, which is what we want. Cool. And the more we texture, the more we're going to get more and more complex texture added. We're going to start texturing things more complexly and introducing new concepts. But just at first, we're going to do nice, simple textures. And then all we're going to do is we're going to export this as an FBX. And all I'm going to do is put that in the same folder that I've been putting on my other FBXs for my scene. There we go. So I'm going to put inside here because here are all my other FBXs. So I'm going to just call this... I'm going to call this something like texture plane for now. Because this isn't really good. This isn't going to go into the game at all. I'm literally just using this for Substance Painter. Cool. And then we can come into Substance Painter. So we've already done the overview of Substance Painter video. If you've not already done that, this is all completely new to you, please go back and watch the basic Substance Painter video, which isn't on the VLE, it's on the Discord, and I might just poke and ping that again so people are aware of it, because I want to just get straight into texturing. We're going to be talking about PBR textures as well, but I'm going to do that whole explanation in another video. So, file, new. This is how we obviously start a new project. My template, I want that just to be metallic roughness, because even though I might not be using metallic in this texture, I might want to use a metallic channel somewhere. You know, maybe I want to do some gold inlays and stuff within this kind of texturing project. You never know. So what that. My file, well, I'm going to search for my texture set list. So I'm going to, my texture plane. So I'm going to go to desktop, and all I'm doing to get to there is get file, select, desktop, hotel project. There we go. Hotel project, scenes folder, and I'm going to look for my texture plane. That's all I'm going to do. Boop. There we go, it's in. Now the document resolution, I'm going to leave as 1024 for now, and the normal format I'm going to leave as 1024 as a DirectX. Everything else I'm just going to leave it as is. The only two things I'm changing is my template is just ASM PBR metallic roughness, the top one, and my file I'm just going to my scenes folder for my Maya project and finding that texture plane. That's all I'm doing. And then I can click OK. And eventually we'll get bored of it. There you go. So I've got my texture plane there. My navigation's really easy because it's just Maya. You know, Alt, left mouse, Alt, middle mouse, Alt, right mouse. And then I've got my, obviously, my UV version on the side. So, my texture set list is only one thing because I've only got one texture set in the entire thing. Again, refer back to the basics of Substance Painter video to get that explained a bit more. So again, a lot of the stuff I'm going to be explaining is what has already been explained in that video. So I'm going to cover it a little bit more broadly this time. Obviously, for this kind of stuff, I'm texturing in a non-destructive way, which means I'm going to use a lot of fill layers, a lot of masks, and a lot of modifier kind of things. So number one, I want to start making a basic marble flooring. So number one, I need to get something that's going to be a base color for the marble, and I'm going to fill that layer. So I'm going to get my fill layer, which is a little fill layer bucket, and that gives me my fill layer. And I only want to use the color channel for now, so I'm going to turn off the other 3 channels on the left hand side, or the 4 channels on the left hand side. So just so I've got color left behind, and I'm going to change that to be a color. There we go. I'm going to add another fill layer now. So I'm going to call this base 1. That's my base layer. So the next one will be the slight offset that you get in marble. When you look at marble textures, it's going to be a slight offset. In fact, I'm going to grab a marble texture so we can look at it. So here we go. So I got a black marble, just so it's a bit easier to see what's going on. But all we've got to think about is like just this in negative. So instead of being black, it's going to be white, and all the white's going to be black, maybe. So what have we got here? So if we look at this black, that's the first base color we've got. Okay, and then what we've got on top of there. So if we kind of squint our eyes and look at it, what we're getting is big cloudy information. So in between these like dark black sections, we've got this big cloudy lighter version of it, which again, because if we think about it as a negative, that would be darker. So I'm going from a lighter color to a slightly darker color, and it's nice and big and cloudy, and it's a little bit. It's not super soft, but it's like, you know, it's very soft information. It's quite soft information. And then looking at this, what I've also got is, yes, you've got these big marbly striations going across it, but I've also got is like little bits of speckly information, little bits of these sharper little elements of, you know, rock and strata. And I'm going to basically build it up in these kind of layers. And I'm constantly going to be looking at my reference. And what you can do is take this into Photoshop and literally just invert it to get a better kind of idea of the colors. So we will open up Photoshop. I'm going to copy this. Wait for Photoshop to open. I've got a very itchy foot. There you go. And then we just image adjustments, invert. There we go. So that's something that we're looking at here on the Babel. So you can see that the light, what was the darkest value, is now the lightest value, and then we're basically going up. So I'm going to look at this as a good jumping off point. So I'm going to put that on the other monitor so I can keep looking at that. I don't need you anymore, so you can go away. So now I'm starting off with some bolder colors so I can get a better idea about this. Rather than trying to get everything perfect at first, I'm just going to go for bold colors so I can see the textures kind of take shape. And then all I need to do later on is change the overall color of these base layers to what I want. This is great. It's a great method. This is the great thing about this method is the non-destructiveness. I can go make a mess at first and then go clean up later on. I'm never truly committing to anything. Okay, so that's my base layer. I'm going to add a new layer on top, and again, same jazz. I'm just going to turn everything except the color off. I'm going to color this, I don't know, blue. There you go. Easy. Now we start to get into the crux of how I do things and how you do things in general. This is not just a Dave way of doing stuff. This is a general way of doing stuff. Every one of these layers, I'm going to add a black mask to, or pretty much every layer. Maybe not everything, but pretty much every layer. I'm going to add a black mask to it and then bring the information that I want back. How do I do that? It's very easy. On this layer that I'm going to call base can either, on this layer, right click it and then go up to where it says add black mask, or I can click on this little icon here. It's like a little white frame with a black disc in the middle, and add a black mask. Boom. So everything disappears because black masks hide stuff. And then we're going to introduce it back using white values. So on this black mask now, so make sure, because you've got two things you can select in this layer now. If I select the color channel, I can see the color information. If I select the mask, then I get this information. So to this mask, what I want to do is add a fill. And again, what I can do is either right click, come to the bottom and say add fill. Oh, that's behind my head actually. Whoop. Right click and add fill right there, or I can click on the little magic wand here and add fill. There we go. Move myself back over there. Now what we've done is add a fill, and it's gone a bit purple because we're letting a grey value come through. So if we additively add blue to red, we get purple. So I'm going to fill this. Well, I'm going to put something in this grayscale union color channel here, which is attached to this mask here. If you don't see this, just look at your color channels to make sure that you've not accidentally added it to the color channel. We only want to add this stuff to the mask. So I'm going to bring up my asset window now. So I'm going to go to Window, Views, Assets. And it appears on the other monitor, like normal. So I'm just going to make these a bit smaller, medium, there we go. I'm just going to make sure that I've got this little icon here, this like a little lattice icon selected, and I'm going to type in noise. So I'm basically filtering out all the noise, or filtering the noise, so I can only see the noise. And these are all the different kind of noise images we have in Painter. As a default, you can always add your own, you can always download asset packs and stuff, but by default this is what we get. And first of all, what I'm looking for is something nice, big and broad. Something like this Clouds 2. That's one I used in class. So I'm going to make sure that I've got fill selected on in my modifier, this fill modifier here. I'm just going to drag Clouds 2 onto that grey scale layer there, that grey scale channel. And then you'll see, hey, look what happens. So now what we're doing is using the black and grey and white values from that image in our mask to allow certain things through, which is really cool. Now we don't have to make a new layer and do that again to add more noise onto this. We can add another fill onto this modifier, so onto this mask. So making sure I've got that mask selected again, I can just add another fill. It's going to override the thing on top of it. It's overriding, we lose all this information, this cloud information, because if you pay attention to these little modifiers here, you'll see norm right here. That means that the layer blending for this is set to normal, which if we remember back to Photoshop, it's covering up the pixels below it. So what I'm going to do is set this to be another layer blend to allow these images to interact with each other. But we'll drag a noise on there first so we can actually see it happen. And what I'm going to do is drag on something like Dirt 2. So inside that new fill, I'm going to drag Dirt 2 into the grayscale. And there we go. So you can see now that we're getting this like dotty effect, which is great. But obviously we're covering up them clouds. So in this, you don't have to change the very bottom one, but on this, anything above it, you need to change that depending on how you want the layer blend to work. I'm going to set this to linear dodge add, because what that does is it allows all the black and white values to basically mix together. It doesn't overlap each other. It doesn't change the black and white values. So linear dodge add. There we go, pardon me. So now what I've got there is mixing in with that noise. I've got a little bit of that speckly information. And I can just keep bringing more and more of these in. So I'm going to add another couple, I reckon. What's that Gaussian? Oh, we've got a Gaussian spots. So I'm going to add a new one, as per usual. So add, fill. I'm going to drag that Gaussian spots. We're right there, yep. Gaussian spots into the grayscale. Very nice. And then again, set that to linear dodge add. So you can see that. But what I'm going to do is start to turn down the opacity of some of this, because this is a little bit too strong. But I like the effect. So in this Gaussian spots at the very far right of that little tab, you've got 100. That's literally the opacity. So I'm going to drag that down, so it's not quite as intense. And the same for dirt. I'm just going to grab that one and just going to drag that down a tiny bit. Something like that. Like that. Cool. Very nice. So another thing we can do is start to affect these layers, or these kind of modifiers, with things like blur and warp, and things that we would normally use inside Photoshop to adjust our images, like blur and stuff. Now what we do for that is add a filter. Same jazz, it's just in this little drop down menu here. All we have to do is add a filter. Now the thing about a filter, or any of these modifiers, is depending on where it is in the stack. If I have this filter at the top and I add a blur, so I'm just going to click where it says filter, I'm going to add a blur, and I'm going to increase that. That affects everything below that blur. But if I move that to, say, just above clouds 2, it's not going to affect dirt 2 and Gaussian spots. Or if I move it above dirt 2, then it's going to do both of those, but not Gaussian spots. So you can basically pick where it affects. But what have we got in this filter here? What have we got? We've got oh, it's too small for my eyes. Baked in light environment, we don't need to do that. We've got this baked lighting stylize, we don't need to do that. We've got bevel. So what bevel will do is do this. So, you know, again, explore these kind of filters, see what they do. You've got these parameters on the left hand side here you can play with. You've got blur directional, blur slope. So I could do something like that. That's kind of giving me a little bit of a directionality. Because, you know, if I'm looking at this, some of this does look a little bit directional. You know, and then I might be able to add another one. So what if I just do that? No, it's too much. Okay, so I'm just going to do like that. I'm just going to do that. And again, you can experiment and, you know, what if you add a filter here and a fill here, and, you know, what does a levels do? Well, levels is just like levels in Photoshop. Again, it just adds that to affect everything below it. So now what I can do is affect the levels of that black and white map below it. So I can push back the black, push back the white. I can do mid control, just like in Photoshop. This is called a histogram. This is all Photoshop. Very good. And again, you can keep stacking this information. You can make new layers, and just make sure that this layer itself is set to something that's going to work. You know, in normal might work, or you might need to set some of this information to, you know, multiply, overlay, whatever, depending on what you want to do. But I'm just going to have that done like that for now, which is good. You know, we're getting something on there. And then I'm going to add a new fill layer again, and I'm going to call this Marble Ing. Marble Ing. Add a black mask as per usual. I'm going to add a fill as per usual. And to this fill, I'm going to add what would be marble. And now luckily we've actually got 3 marble noises. Come here. We've actually got 3 marble noises already in there. So down at the bottom there, you've got marble fine. You've got marble veins, which it looks really good for crack glass. And you got marble wide, and then you got other stuff. So again, there's things you can play with. Just explore this stuff, yeah. So what I'm going to do is drag marble fine into my grayscale this time, so you can see what's going on. There you go. So we've got some marble flooring. Very, very simple. This is where we can look at the controls again from the side. So on the noises, you're going to get similar kind of controls. On your directional, you're going to get these kind of controls. On my marble fine, I've got similar, but if I drop down that noise, this is a slightly different. So we've still got disorder, just like on the other ones, where we can basically just move that and it's going to change what it looks like. But then you got marbling, and that will basically blur out, either set to 0 and it's really, really sharp. If I start to increase that, it's going to get more and more softer and get that kind of soft marbling effect, which I really like. So I can decide how much of that I want. So I'm just going to bring it to about, I don't know, there. I like the way that looks. So we're getting our colours in there. So now what I'm going to do is start to change my colours to suit what I'm trying to do. So my very base isn't going to be I don't want to be white, but I want to be quite light. But also, I'm going to have it be a little bit warm as well. I don't want this to be like stark white marble. I want this to have a tiny bit of warmth to it. I feel that if you make the extremes of either full color or full black and white, you lose something. So I'm going to just add a little bit of warmth in there. So, you know, you could read that as white when really it's a little bit grey orange, like that. I'm going to do the same thing on this layer now. Bring it down. And start just getting some of that slightly darker information in there. Like that. Subtle, but you know, it works. And then my marbling, I'm going to make that, make sure it's only, for now, only colour. I'm going to make that, again, something that is going to be a bit nicer to look at. So, something like that. That looks nice. That does look very, very nice. So we've spent a few minutes there just creating some basic kind of textures, and we can keep working into it. Adding more detail, making layers above and below, and you know, finesse. Adding another, maybe we'd do another. Literally, if I just copy this layer, so Control D this layer, I make a new version of this, including all the different. So I'm just literally clicking on the layer, Control D, duplicates the layer with all the parameters that I made. But this time, what I'm going to do is drop the marble wide. I believe I'll drop marble wide in there. Yeah, I'll do that one. So I'm going to drop marble wide into the grayscaler this time. And not leave it like this, because now it looks a little bit too busy. It looks too shattered. So what I'm going to do is start to decrease opacity. So it's a little bit more subtle. I'm going to noise parameters. Adjust some of that marbling again. So if we actually bring that opacity up to max, turn U off. So with the marble wide, if I adjust the marbling on that one, you can see what goes on. You can change the disorder. Do whatever. I'm just going to bring that right down. I'm actually going to maybe change this layer blending to multiply as well. So that should darken it a touch. There we go. So remember what multiply does. Now for this, what I think I'm going to do as well is just experiment with adding a filter and adding a directional blur to it. So I'm blurring it in a direction. I'm going to go in that direction there. And again, I'm just going to, maybe not that intense, but it's going to add a little bit of something to it. Maybe a warp would do. I'm going to look for something called a warp. And again, explore and experiment with what these filters do. Have a play. Nothing's going to bite you. There it is, warp. Do I have a directional warp though? That's it, next warp, and then directional warp, there you go. Change that to be 100. That's not really doing anything. Yeah, it's not really doing anything. Oh, there you go. So my settings need it to be. I need intensity divided by 1. 1000 isn't going to cut it for me, so that's not doing anything. So I need my intensity by 1. Maybe I need to increase that to like 5. That's better. So I'll force it to be increased by 5. I just play with stuff, you know, just have a play. So all I'm doing is just adding like really, really subtle stuff, because you know you're not necessarily going to see it straight away, but what you see is something. Without it, it looks okay. With it, it looks even better. Nice. So I'm just going to rotate my camera around. My light obviously holding shift and holding right click and moving. I can rotate my light round to see what it looks like. Very, very nice. Now, one thing I'm missing here is any kind of real roughness information and any kind of like height information. But first of all, what I'm going to do is just export this, take it into Unreal, see what it looks like, and then I'm going to come back, make some adjustments, and see what that looks like. So, how do we export something? Very, very easy. File, export textures, because we don't need to export the mesh because we've got the mesh. We've not affected it. So export the textures. My output, what I'm going to do is send that into Hotel Project Images, and I'm just going to put it in there for now. So select that folder. For now, I'm just going to leave it as a PNG. Again, I was saying in class that there's conflict over what image type we need to use, and people are some people are PNG, some people are Targa, some people are TIFF. Just keep it nice and simple for now. Don't overcomplicate anything. Just keep it as a PNG. And the size, well, I want this to be a 4 meter by 4 meter slab of marble, or a 4 meter 4 meter texture section anyway. Not necessarily a slab of 4 meter not a slab of 4 meter marble. Can't say that. But a texture. Now I want this to be made up of 2 meter slabs, so I'm just going to make it a 4K because 4K equals 4 meters. 4096. And other than that, it's perfectly fine. That's all I need to change for now. I'm going to export that, and while that's doing its thing, you'll see green writing in a sec. I'm going to open up my project folder for Maya. Images, and there we go. So you can see it does say that it exports a emissive map, but it actually doesn't, as you can see by your outputs here. But it's given us 5 maps. It's given us a color map, so you can look at that. Very nice. Like we spoke about in class, this is a base color map, but it also gets referred to as an albedo. You've got your height map. Now this doesn't really have anything on it because we're not using any height information. So this map we're actually going to delete because we're not using the height map. The metallic map, well, marble is not metallic, so we don't need this map either. The normal map, we're going to use this one, and it might look blank now, but if you zoom in, oh, actually, it will be blank, actually, because we've not put any normal information on there, so this will also be blank. And then we've got roughness, and this will also be blank because we've not done anything. So really, currently, the only map that works is the base color one. But we're still going to delete height and metallic because we don't need to use those. And we'll be left with these guys. And even though there's nothing on the normal map or the roughness map, we're still going to plug those in, because if we override these textures later on, when we re-upload, all that information will be updated. So I'm just going to keep this window open on my other monitor, because what I'm going to do is make sure I save. So make sure I save this project. I'm going to save this into my hotel project again. I've lost it. There we go. To my images. So all my texture stuff, I'm just going to put into my images folder. Floor texture template, something like that. So I know what it is. I don't have to texture everything inside here, by the way. I'm just doing my floor inside here. My walls I might do in another one, and then obviously when it comes to different props, I'll do them in other projects. Oh, other painter projects anyway. So let's go into Unreal. Lovely. let's go into our floor, and all I'm going to do is drag those 3 images into here. So 1, 2, 3, drag it in, and there you go. Easy. So now that's in there. I need to then set up a material for this. So I've not got any materials in here, but what we will have is the material with the color map and then the 3 nodes pointing in. So all I'm going to do is make a material. This I'm going to call marble M, because obviously it's a material. Marble tiles, because I know I'm going to put tiles in this eventually. Go in. And all I need to do is navigate back to that texture folder so I can see this. And then all I'm going to do is drag those into this scene here. It's as simple as that. I'm just shift selecting all of these, dragging them into there. Dead simple. Obviously, you need to drag them into the Unreal folder first before you drag them into here. You can't drag them from the desktop into the material because Unreal's not clever enough to understand that you basically want to do that. Cool. So what has this given us? So we've got a color map here. We can clearly see there's a color map. This one will be plugged into base color, obviously. You've got your normal map. This one's going to get plugged into the normal, like there. And this one is your roughness. This one's going to get plugged into roughness. There we go. And then what I'll give you, what that will give you there is a lovely marble ball. And it still looks pretty now. I think that looks great. Now the great thing is, I'll hit apply. Obviously that doesn't appear anywhere because I've only just made this material, so that's not actually attached to anything. But what I'm going to do now is go to my geometry, environment, find my my floor 4x4, the big floor piece. So my floor 4x4 there. And I'm just going to apply that material inside here, but you will see that in update of the entire project. So I'm going to make sure I can go see my material there. I'm going to click on the little drop down menu and start typing in. So it's going to be m_marble. There you go. So that's marble. I can click that. There we go. And see how it's updated inside the scene and also inside our little preview. So I'm going to save that. Click play and just see how that looks. Nice. So I'm just getting a feel for it. You know, it looks pretty good. Looks nice. It's obviously very reflective at the minute because I've got a very basic roughness map in there that isn't very rough to begin with. There's no normal information, so it also looks like a perfectly glass, smooth surface. But the colour's working, which is good. And then I can also check that out because it looks very orange here because I've basically rotated my directional light up at the top here. I've rotated this so it's at an angle, so it's more like a setting sun, just because I like it. So if I go to my asset library, I'm going to see there what it looks like in normal light, and it looks pretty good. Looks nice. And then all I have to do is apply the same to these 3 pieces as well. So I go and I find basically all the floor pieces. I just apply all the same jazz, and you'll see it updating across the board. Not that one. There you go. And then we just got the quarter one. Why hasn't the quarter? Oh, there it goes. There you go. Yep. So a couple of minutes just reassigning all the materials and you're good. Obviously this isn't going to be the only flooring we have. We'll have other flooring, you know, we'll have carpet flooring, we'll have different tiling flooring. Maybe we've got like this cool type of flooring where you will lay down some sort of plaster in a frame for like that area, and then what you'll do is you'll scatter glass or rocks into it, then flatten it down, and then skim that with a kind of a polish, and then it gives you that really nice speckly information. It was really big in the 70s, and I think it's always been a little bit big in hotels over like white plaster flooring with this speckly kind of surface. It's neat. So I can look at that now, and this will also tell me if my textures are wrong. So obviously I've not updated, I've not re-imported the new materials, because I can see there that this appears to be squished, which isn't good, and this is fine. Now this one, you can see that the texture is actually really small compared to the other ones, like this. And this is what I was saying in class. You've got to think about the size of your texture and the size of your object. So if this is a 1 meter square, a 2 meter section of flooring, when it's next to this, we're going to see a big issue. We're going to see a big difference between them two textures. One is really small and tight information. The other one's a little bit bigger, and it does not match. If I want this to be a 2 meter section of flooring that matches this, that's why I set up that UV to be that bottom left corner. What I'd do for this is I would texture something and I'd make it a 2K texture and just make sure that all the detail is representative of 2K. But I can always fix that. It's I'm not bothered for now. So that's whoops a daisy. So that's that basic tiling in there. It looks nice. I know that I'm going to have other flooring later on, but noise. And it tiles as well, which is nice. This is stuff that we don't necessarily have to worry about inside Painter as well. A lot of the stuff, when we use noises, all these noises are pretty much set up to be tiling. So unless you really start messing with it, everything's always going to tile. It's clever enough to do that, and I love that. Back in the day, we spent days making sure stuff tiled in Photoshop, and there's tricks and techniques as what you do to make sure stuff tiled, and we don't need to do it anymore. And if you were to go up and look down, especially if let's turn off the lights. There you go. You can obviously see a repeating pattern. You can see the same bit of information repeating all the time. That's because we're looking down at that object, at that scene. But when you're actually playing, you don't necessarily see it. It's not as obvious. And then when you've got people moving around it, you've got audio, you've got, maybe we might do different versions of this marble to mess around with. Then we start to really mess around with it and really start to hide that repeating. Cool. So that works. So let's go back into Painter and do some more stuff. Pardon me. So we got this nice flooring, but we're missing a little bit of height information. Well, like the slight imperfections of the surface. We're missing some kind of roughness to help control how rough that bugger is. And also, we're I want this to be tiled, so it looks like, instead of just being one massive solid piece of marble, because where did these people get a piece of marble this big? That wouldn't happen. So we have to break it up some way. So I'm going to make this into a 2x2 section. So each section of marble is 2 meters, which is still big, but it's not unheard of. And you can, again, you can mess around with that. You could have a version of this which is a 2x2. You can have a version of this which is 3x3. A version which is just a big 4 meter section. And then you can, these are all things you can play around with. Look at floors around you. It's not always super uniform. There are points when tiling gets offset or anything like that. Okay. So let's add a little bit of height information, some noise, and then what we'll do is every time we do something, we'll update it and see what it looks like inside Unreal. So this is really easy because all our materials that we've made, all our layers so far, already have this capacity. We've just turned it off. So, for instance, if I click on the color channel of this first base 2 here, this is where we put the slight noise on there, and we turned off everything except the height. Oh, sorry, everything except the color. I'm going to turn the height on now, and then you can see that I've just clicked it and we get the height channel, and now what I'm going to do is just start messing with that so you can see what that does. you can see that it's producing this very noisy kind of surface. Height maps are an exercise in subtlety, because as we know from Boston class in the video about materials, black and white maps don't have a very clean transition from black to white. It becomes very chunky. But color maps, anything with RGB, because you're using multiple different values from different color ranges, it becomes very soft. But this is a black and white map, remember, so it's going to look chunky. Also, your flooring's not going to look like this anyway. No one's going to have flooring that looks like this. So what I'm going to do is make this really subtle by just having a 0.01. Maybe that's too subtle. Oh, I need to be minus 0.01 as well. What happens if I do minus 0.1? Okay, minus 0.5. Oh, minus 0.05, you fool. Okay, so you're seeing those imperfections a little bit. And what I can do is turn down some of that information, so I could turn down that a little bit. And I could turn up this one. I can still mess with it a little bit. Again, it's that non-destructive workflow. Everything is still there for me to mess around with. I'm not committing to anything. Okay, that's nice. That's looking good. I can see there, using the light, I can see there's a little bit of surface information. And I'm going to go to my marbling and do the same thing. So I'm going to click on the colour for the marbling, and I'm going to turn on my height, and I'm going to start adjusting this. So let's go for minus 0.01. Okay, it looks pretty good. It looks alright. It's jumping out a little bit in places, but not too much. But remember, some of this is going to be really subtle. It's really subtle. I probably don't need to do it for the really small, very, very subtle stuff. I could do it if I wanted to. Let's just give it a go, see what it does, because it might actually give me... if I do that, it's going to be, again, really subtle. So 0.05, let's say. I'll put it in positive again, minus, because we're going down, 0.05. Okay, so it's going down a little bit. And that looks pretty nice. Now, a few things are happening here, which might be altering how we're seeing this. Number one, we're not really controlling our roughness, because I'm going to do something which might change the way I'm actually seeing this information. We've not really got anything controlling our roughness, so we've got a generic roughness going on. So I'm going to add a new layer above everything else, and I'm going to turn off everything except the roughness map, or the roughness channel, and I'm going to decrease that to something like 0.02. No, not 0.0, 0.2. Like that. So it's a little bit shinier. Maybe like that. So I can see there's a lot more information there than I really thought at the beginning. So what I'm going to do is, I don't like how speckly it is. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm actually going to take away some of this information. So I'm going to go back to the basics and just have that cloud information showing. There we go. So just with that cloud information, that's giving me a nice little uneven surface. And then with the map there, okay, that's nice. And then with that marbling there, okay, that's much better. So what I thought I wanted to do at first actually turns out to not help me. Because that just gets a little bit too noisy. So I'm going to turn that off for now. Now if I press C on my keyboard, C, I can flick through the channels. So you can see now I'm going through, this is my color channel, this is my height channel, this is my roughness channel, this is my metallic, normal height mesh, mask. I'm going to turn these off and on to see if they do anything. So they do actually add something. It's very subtle, but they do add something. I actually want that. I want the color versions of these to be left behind. So I press M to go back to material so I can see it like that. I do want the color to be left behind, but I want them to not affect the height. So what I'm going to try and do is experiment a little bit. Up at the very top of the layers here, you've got this little drop down menu, and currently this is all set to be affecting the base color. But if I change this, I can go to height, and now all these are going to be affecting the height. So if I start to adjust this, you see I'm not actually losing any of that information. I'm not losing that marbling information, the color of it, I'm losing the height information. You know, it's still there. I'm just losing the height. So what I'm going to do is just I'm leaving 0. Well, yeah, I'll turn those off. I'll turn that off. Okay, so I've made some adjustments there. Okay. You know, faffing about a little bit, but I'm just having a play. So this new, I'm going to call this roughness. So again, then I've got this new roughness channel at the very top, and it's very, very shiny. But what I'm going to do is also break this roughness up a little bit with a bit of noise. So what I'm going to do is again add a black mask to this roughness. Add a black mask. I'm going to add another fill layer to this mask, and then I'm going to add something nice and noisy to this. So let's choose something maybe directional, so I can have this directional thing here. Directional noise, directional noise, directional noise, directional noise, directional noise. So I want something that's still very cloudy, but something that isn't necessarily going to like super intensely distract me. So I'm going to go for this noise too. Give it a go. So I can see there. Hopefully that comes through on the video. When I turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on. So I've added a little bit of almost like directionality to this noise, to the roughness. Again, I'm just experimenting. Is it the right thing to do? I don't know. I'm just having a play. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is re-export these, and because I've not moved the original ones I exported, what these are going to do are overwrite. But when I'm happy with something, I'm going to be like, okay, I'm not going to make any adjustments on that for now. What I'm going to do is move them to a folder within the images folder to basically stop them from getting overridden. So I'm going to export. Yeah, that's all good. And actually, if I just get a folder up and I direct us to that information. Okay, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. You probably won't actually. Yeah, so I'm just going to export this, and if I go to that folder, so now these have been updated. So now you can see the roughness has been definitely updated, because the roughness is taking that directional information that we made. There is like height again does have some information, but we don't need it. Well, metallic won't have any information, so we don't need it at all. The normal will now have information when we zoom in. Again, hopefully it's coming through on the video. It's subtle, but you can see nice normal information for the tiling, which is nice. I'm just going to go back and actually do a little bit of something. On the base, the marbling, and the marbling copy, what I'm going to do is turn the roughness on and see how that affects stuff. Okay. So maybe not. I'll not have it on the base one. I'll do it on the marble though, because I kind of like the idea of this marble becoming a bit more punchier because it's rougher. Like that. You see how these marble sections are starting to punch out a little bit because of the roughness. So I'll drag that down a little bit. And again for this one, I'm gonna increase that a little bit, like that. So we'll see how it looks. You know, this might look like trash. Who knows? So I'm gonna again export this, export the texture, export. That's done. So then in my folder, if I look back at that roughness map, now you can see that roughness information appearing. Cool. So I'm once again delete the height, delete metallic, jumping back into Unreal, go into those texture folders. All I'm going to do is once again, just like we do with the geometry, I'm going to re-import these. So I've shift selected all of them, right click, re-import, and in fact I'm going to turn the lights on for this because we're going to see that flooring kind of come to life a little bit, get us a nice position like there. Boom, there we go. So it's not super obvious, but we've started to get a bit of information appearing in our tiling, which is good. So now it's not looking as boring. Breaks up a little bit. Awesome. Now there are things unfortunately within the Unreal Engine where it doesn't look exactly like it does inside Painter. And that's just a general thing. There's something we've got to be aware of. Between every modeling and rendering software, things always look different in a certain way. Unreal has a real issue when it comes to roughness maps and metallic maps, anything that's shiny. So we've got to kind of control those a little bit. But at first, that's fine. You know, this is all good. I'm not happy. I'm not happy. What? I'm not mad about it. So do a Control Shift S to save everything. So I'm happy about that. So now I'm going to bring in those tiles. So we'll go back to Painter. So I'm bringing those tiles now. And I'm going to make a new fill layer above everything. I'm going to have color, height, and roughness working. I'm just going to jack up the roughness to be full. And I'm going to pull the color to be a very dark color for now. So that's currently, obviously, covering everything up. I'm going to call this layer tiling. You know, you name files just like you do inside Photoshop. Again, black mask to this new image, and then to this, I'm going to add a fill modifier. There you go. So look at how we've only got these little orange bars underneath the mask. This means we've got something attached to it. You know, modifiers, that kind of stuff. If you see a little orange bar underneath your color, that means you've added something to the color map, which oftentimes doesn't do anything for you. Or it kind of messes stuff up for you. So, in my asset folder, I'm going to make sure I click this little thing so I'm not actually filtering by this. So I don't want to be filtering by anything. I'm going to type in tile. And then we're looking for tile generator, which is this little geezer here. So then I'm going to drag that into that grayscale, and we're going to get this. Which is kind of like what I want, but not really. So when you're dealing with generators, we will deal with two different types of generators. Generators like this, and then generators that we apply inside our layers here. This is the really basic version of a generator. This is a tiling generator. It generates tiles. It's a little bit more involved in the settings than other stuff. You know, it's not just disorder and, you know, marbling or anything like that. This has got a few extra little bits. So let's go through. Seed won't really do anything for us now because we're dealing with squares. Invert will invert. So obviously we want it to be like this. Position. We'll do this. Well, with this shape, position will do this. Contrast will do this. Amount is what we want because amount is how many of these little squares it's going to replicate across the surface. So this is a 10 by 10, so we've got 100 tiles. If you're doing stuff like kitchen tiles, I'm looking at my bathroom here. I've got like little 1-inch squares in my bathroom. This is perfect for it. You can do a lot of this fun stuff with it. I want 4 big 2-meter slabs. So I want my X and Y axis to be 2. Oopsie daisy. I pressed tab. There you go. So there you go. Boom, boom, boom. Still very soft, obviously. this is now where we go down to the next option. So we go down to pattern, and at the very top it says type, and this is the type of pattern we'll have. And again, just go through and experiment with stuff. So we've got brick, we've got square, we've got disc, we've got parabola, bell, Gaussian, pyramid. You know, have a play. I want these to be square because I don't want anything to be like faded or smooth around the edges. I want this to be square. It gives me nice sharp lines, and it's given us some really nice small ones at the minute. Very thin ones, which are good because I kind of want that. I don't want big grouting in between these. I want these to be very, very thin and quite crisp. But again, have an experimentation. Now your resolution is basically how crisp this information is. I think on the square one, it's not really going to do anything for us because it's square. It's all right angles. But what we can do is change that to be. Let's go for. Okay, so that gets rid of them altogether. Okay, I'm going to put those back. What happens if I do this? Okay, yeah, I'm just going to leave them as 2K. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure what that resolution really does. If I hang over, does it tell me? No. Yeah, again, it's where playing sometimes is the best thing to do. Don't worry about every last little bit of detail. But as you can see there, I get a nice little intersection. I am really not bothered about the fact that this is obviously not random bits of marble, and this is actually literally just because players won't notice that. And when we need to do this, if we ever need to inside Painter, we can adjust it. We can fix that. But for now, I'm not bothered. Let's not bother about it. So my scale. So if you go down a little bit to scale, this is how I can scale the tiles themselves. So I can go. So I'm going to go 0.00. So that's 0.00, 0.99. So if I go 0.99, so that's as close to 1 as I could probably take it. But if I go to 0.991, okay, 0.995. Okay, that's not really doing anything. Oops, daisy. 0.996. 0.997. I bet it's going to just jump like that, yeah. Another thing that might be happening here, or another thing that might be affecting what we're seeing, is the fact that we're looking at, even though I know this is going to be 4K, this is going to be a big 4-meter section of flooring, the end texture comes out as 4K. What I'm looking at here is not 4K. If we go to texture settings over on the right hand side here, if we look at size, we're looking at this as a 1K map, a 1024 map. The great thing about Painter is I can actively jump in between these different sizes whenever I want. So I can go all the way down to 128, and it's going to basically change everything to be a 128 texture. Or I can go all the way up to 4K, and it's going to change it to be a 4K texture. Or I can then go down to 1K. You know, I can actively go up and down these whenever I want. And there's tons of stuff, you know, there's rotation, what is this rotation symmetry random? That's not really doing anything. You know, there's tons of stuff we can play with. And that's just in pattern. But then we've got size, we've got position, we've got rotation. You know. If you're clever enough, do you know how to do, can you figure out how to do 2 sets of tiles, which are basically the white tiles with the diamond black tiles, that really old classic tile. Can you figure out how to do that? That'd be quite fun. And then color, you know, this is useful sometimes. This is I'm thinking whether I should go and explain what's going on here in this, but I don't think I will. So the color isn't actually affecting the color; it's affecting the color. But really, it's affecting things that can allow us to add a little bit of variation. Because currently, this whole entire thing has taken a uniform roughness and a uniform colour. But what we can do is adjust these to kind of upset. But again, I'm actually getting too deep down the rabbit hole at this point. All I'm going to do is just bring in that tile generator, set the amounts to 2, and then my pattern I'm going to set to square, and then change my scale to match what I want. I can even adjust the scale, the size in X and Y as well. So if I go 0.99, I keep pressing that. So again, play with some of the settings, see what they do. So if I set this back to 1, and then I'll do scale 0.995, 0.995. Okay, so it's still not, it's just on the edge where it doesn't want to do anything. 0.997 is probably going to do something. Yeah, it's going to do it really thin. 0.996. Yeah, so that's so subtle. So I'm going to do is leave these as 1, and you're going to be 0.997. Cool. So again, I'm just experimenting. The last thing I'm going to do is just make sure that I go back to the color channel for this, and I'm going to drag the height down. Because as you can see, what's happening there is it's giving me actual physical normal map information to help me separate those off. So I'm dragging it down like that. And I'm going to drag it down maybe 0.5 like that. So that should be quite obvious in the texture. Oh, it's coming up actually, so I don't want it to come up. I want it to go down, so minus 0.3. There we go. That's better. Again, just because how Unreal works and Painter works, you can always just come back if you change a parameter, look at it in Painter and go, oh, actually, you know what, I need to do something. So let's export that. Export those textures. Yep, export that bad boy. See how it updates inside there. You're going to see that now we have a normal map with both marble and tiling information on there. You got a roughness map which is doing the same thing. And obviously you've got a color map which is doing the same thing. And if I go into Unreal, again what you're going to see is this whole thing kind of jump to life. Click, shift, click to grab them textures, right click, import, re-import, boom, and there we have tiles. Awesome. Awesome. And we can always, again, just go in and either within Painter or within Unreal, adjust stuff. So my material here is very shiny, incredibly shiny. Maybe too shiny. You know, maybe it's a little bit too shiny. So what I can do is actually help this roughness map around. So this is getting in a little bit of intermediate material work here, because currently all I've got is just a material directly plugged in. I could turn off some stuff inside here to help it along, but for now I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is just introduce you to a very basic, but obviously if you don't know about it, it's complex, way that we can push stuff like this black and white map a little bit further. Again, this is more advanced texturing, and I don't really expect everyone to be doing this, but if you feel spicy enough, cool, let's do it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of a chain of nodes to help power this even further. So number one, what I'm going to do is add something called a multiply. So I'm going to hold M for multiply, and click, and I get a multiply layer. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this into the top A, and then plug this into roughness. So that's the chain. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to multiply this roughness information here by a powered node. A node which is basically powering it. Basically increases that number. So what I'm going to do is right click, type power, bring that in like that, plug that in to there, and then it's saying that, oh, this node is missing a base input because nothing's controlling this number, this base number here. So I'm going to give it a value. So how much do we times by? So we're going to be times by 2%. So every time we're going to increase by 2 times every time. So I'm going to hold 1, and then again make a value, and I'm going to plug it in like this. So currently, this is going to be the exact same roughness. It's very, very shiny. If I increase this value to 1, I'm timesing that roughness a little bit. So now it's getting a little bit rougher. So if I then input, say, 5, now that's very rough. You see I'm not getting any reflections in there anymore. So then I can, you know, what if I do 2.5? There's a little bit of roughness in there. It's not, it's almost like a levels. It's another way that we do when we do levels inside Photoshop. I'm basically I'm powering the roughness in the things that are controlling the roughness. So you can see on this little version on the left here, my roughness is starting to get a little bit weaker. We can see some reflection, but it's far less shinier. So if I go down to, say, 2, you can see that roughness is coming a little, you know, some of that reflection is coming back a little bit. Now this exponential here, if I hover over that, it's going to be exponent. Basically, if I put this to 5, again, this is how many times. So we're timesing 2 by 5, and then it powers this. Or I could go to 0.5. So I'm doing half as much. So really I'm only doing 1. If this is powering this value by 0.5, it's only doing 1 into this. So it's a little bit of maths. But you know, if I just leave that as exponential as 2, and then I'm at like value 2 there, so that's looking okay. So I'm going to go to maybe 1.5. Okay. So now that's looking a little bit shiny, but not super like glass reflective. So if I now just save that and I'll apply that, we should see this whole floor change. There we go. So what about if I input that to... I'll do a 5, see what 5 gives me. So it's probably going to take everything out. So yeah, you can see how that affects the surface. So that's 2. And again, I'm just experimenting now at this point, seeing what the best value is. That's not a bad value, but no, actually no. Looking at that, it's not a good value at all. Maybe the directional map isn't the right thing for me. So what about if I just go back into Painter and change that directional map in the roughness? So that directional noise, I'm just going to bring in another noise. Let's bring in, so I'll go back to there. Let's type in noise. Let's grab fractal sum 1. Okay, so I'm going to drag that fractal sum 1 in instead. And then just export that. Let it override. Do the re-import in Unreal. There you go. So now we've got more of a different, it's less directional now. So I made a decision. It turned out to be the wrong one. So if I go to 1, what does that look like? It's thinking. There we go. So it's still very shiny. So again, I'm just going to play with some of these numbers. What happens if I just play this? What does I feel? What do I feel like when I just play it? Okay, you know, it's not bad. .5. So this is a very heavy-handed approach to stuff. It's not a super clean way of doing stuff, but I'm just, like I said, I'm just getting an idea. I'm just having to play until I feel like something's okay, you know. It doesn't feel too bad. Maybe the roughness, you know, again, I'm just going to play in at this point. So all I've done there, just in the roughness map, is I've effectively got a value which I'm then timesing by 2, a power. This is basically, it's like a levels node. If we think about it like it's like a levels node. And I'm basically plugging that, I'm mixing that into this multiply, so I'm multiplying the levels of my roughness map together into my roughness. And there's other fun stuff you can do as well. I can flip this whole, I can basically invert this node by doing a, I think it's a -1. So if I do a minus, I think it's 1 minus, I think it's called 1 minus. I think a 1 minus node, if I remember rightly. If I do, we'll see anyway. This will basically invert the image. And at this point, I'm just like messing around. So that's 1 minus. So if I just unplug this and just plug this directly in, like that. So it don't matter if this is plugged into this, because this node here is not actually being plugged into anything. So I'm just taking this node, I think I'm literally just flipping it. Yeah. So I can see the roughness there, but it's basically the alternate. Why it was so rough before, why it was so shiny before, I basically just flipped it, so it's that level but in rougher by doing that 1 minus. Again, this is me, because I've been using Unreal for years. This is me just having to play with stuff. You don't have to do any of this. You could literally just get rid of all that, ignore everything I've just said, plug it directly into the roughness, and then control everything through your Substance Painter. And all you've got to do is just start making adjustments inside Substance Painter. So you will have to kind of power it more inside Painter, but like I said, there are things that we have to turn on and off inside our materials inside Painter, Unreal, to make them look perfect. But well, like more like what they are in our Painter. But again, for now, I don't care. I just want to get it in, get it looking. Long story short, hey, look at this, I got some marble tiles. And then I can go look at that inside Control-Shift-S to do a big save. I can go look at that in my asset library. And there you go. Nice. So, you know, that's basics of making material. I'm going to make another one, which is just going to be some kind of flat pilaster speckly kind of material. Again, with a little bit of height information, some roughness information. Because it's still going to be a polished surface. I'm just going to, you know, make it a bit nicer. So I'm in Painter, not Designer. I click Designer by accident then. So Designer might pop up in a second, but we want it to go away. Go away, Designer. There we go. Go away, Designer. There we go. So I'm not going to get rid of any of this. But this is all fine. I'm not going to delete anything. I'm just going to use a folder. So I'm going to grab all this. And I'm going to click on the little folder icon up here. Just next to the trash can. So drag it in. There we go. And then I can call this my marble tiles. So now I've just contained all my marble tile texturing into there. And to be safe, so I don't accidentally override anything, if I go to that folder where I saved out those textures, there it is, images. So there we go. There are our textures with us exported. I'm going to make a new folder inside here and call this marble tiles. It's perfectly fine making folders inside this Maya folder structure. You know, what we don't want to do is add more to the root folder structure, like here. We don't need to add any more here. But we can add ones inside here, especially if it's organization, you know, add stuff. Just be organized. Because as long as we just drag this entire root folder to where we want it to go, we're all good. So yeah, I'm going to drag my normal map, color map, and roughness map into there. And then I'm going to delete my metallic and my height because I don't need them. Cool. So I might as well actually make a new folder in preparation. So I'm going to call this speckle floor. So when I'm done with this, I can just dump them inside there. Right. So I've put all those in a folder, and that folder is basically containing all my floor tile information. I'm going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this speckle floor. Speckle floor. And then I'm going to start building a new texture inside here. So I can turn that off actually and just hide it. I don't need to see it anymore. So, start from the beginning. New base layer, new fill layer, boom. This is not going to have any channels assigned to it, so it's just going to be color at first. And I'm going to make a fairly light, again, same kind of warmth, plaster material. I don't want to go stark white. I want to add a bit of color to it, a bit of warmth to it. So I'm going to start off with base 1. I'm going to make a new layer above that, do the same thing. This time I'm going to make a nice cloudy overall color shift. So this one I'm going to make, again, slightly darker. Add a black mask. Add a fill layer. Find something nice and noisy. I can experiment with my noises as well, so I can even experiment with some of this 3D noise. So let's go for a 3D Perlian. Drag it in. And that gives me this. The only difference with the 3D Perlian is any of the 3D noises is it's technically adding it in a 3D cube, but because this is a flat plane, it's not really having much of an effect. But if this was a 3D object, we'll be able to see it a lot better. All this gives me is just controls here. So because we're working in a 3D space, we've got scale, obviously, but then we've got like size in the x-axis, size in the y-axis, size in the z-axis. So Y isn't doing anything because, again, there is no Y-axis on this because it's a flat plane. So let's go for 12. 12. Oops, a daisy. Nope. 12. So I'm making a bright big zero of this. You know, have a play with it. I don't think that's necessarily the best one for me because, whatever, you know. Try other 3D noises. Try some of this. Go back and try some of these. So what have we got? What have we got? What have we got? You're remembering that the lighter the value, the more is going to be allowed through in the color. Go, let's go for that one. Let's go for Grunge Sand Dry. Okay, ooh, that's actually quite nice. That's quite nice. Brush palettes. Oh, that doesn't do anything. What's contrast to? Okay. What's balance to? Okay. Let me bring down the intensity a little bit. Oh, the opacity. Oh, I'm in height map there. There you go. Something like that. You know, whatever. Now I'm going to make some of that speckly information. Some of that, like, again, this is like plaster that's rolled out, and then they'll scatter stuff, like bits of old pot and stuff in it, and then they'll flatten it down, and then they'll they'll skim it and polish it. So, base 2. Base 2. So I'm going to add a new one. I'm going to scatter one. And I'm going to make this quite dark. And at first I'm going to not do anything except colour. But I'm going to make this be like a dark, very dark blue kind of colour. Like that. Again, add a black mask. Add a fill to that black mask. Same jazz over and over again. Now this time, I want to have lots of speckly information. So Grunge Dirt, that's a nice one. Grunge Dirt 2, that's a nice one. Grunge Dirt, Gaussian Spots is quite a nice one. Not Marble Fine. Okay, so let's go for Dirt 2. Yeah, okay. So we're starting to get that nicely in there. I'm going to use Dirt 2 3 times on this. Because what I want to do is get this level of, it being scattered around, but a little bit tighter. This isn't tight enough for me. Even with my noise parameters, it's just not tight enough. So I'm going to do another fill layer. Again, change this just like I did before. I'm going to change the layer blend to this fill to a linear dodge. And I'm going to add again Dirt 2 in again, but this time I'm going to change it to this distortion. So basically what I'm doing there is I'm starting to almost scatter it around a bit more, and then I'm going to do it again. Linear dodge add, drag in Dirt 2, mess with the disorder. Maybe even use, up at the very top here, we've got offset. I might even use offset just to move it around. It tiles, so it doesn't matter if I'm moving it around like this. It's tiling. So where am I going with this? Okay, so I get something like that. I'm getting a little bit of information. That's cool. That's quite nice. I'm going to copy this whole folder structure, this whole layer. So Control D, just duplicate that. I'm going to change this to be more of a darker red color, and then just go around and again distort. Just use the distort to move stuff around. And hopefully you can kind of see the results I'm looking for appear, which is this kind of like I don't know what the actual floor is called. It's like you got little bits of tile and stuff in there. It's very cool. Now I'm going to be very fancy. I'm going to put bits of either fool's gold or some like painted golden stuff. I'm going to put a bit of gold in the floor. So I'm going to add a new fill layer. In fact, you know what I can do? Just duplicate that layer again. So I'm going to Control D this layer. Call that last one Scatter 2. And I'm going to call this gold Scatter Gold. Scatter Gold. And all I'm going to do now is make sure it's a goldy colour, which is kind of in the yellows about there. My roughness I'm going to turn down, and my metallic I'm going to turn on. So I'm going to turn that up quite high. There we go. So you see I'm getting like little specks of metal in my flooring now. But maybe this is too scattered like the other ones. So what I'm going to do is maybe find something that's a little bit less scattered. That's something I can play with. I've already used like pretty much the least scattering scatter around anyway. I'll leave it. But again, I'm going to turn off 2 of these. I'm going to delete 2 of those dirt fills there, and I'm just going to use 1 of them because I don't want this everywhere. I don't want this to be like a golden floor. I'm just going to use my distort just to move it around. That's nice. And on this one, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of height. So I'm going to turn on height, and I'm going to just nudge it down a little bit, tiny bit. Just a tiny bit. 0.02. Nope. I'm going up there. I don't want to go up. Or minus 0.02. Still too much. 0.01. Minus 0.01. Something like that. And then above all this, I'm going to put another roughness controlling layer. So I'm just going to turn everything except roughness on. I'm going to pull down my roughness a little bit. Like that. And then I'm going to throw a black mask. Fill. It's all the same. It's all the same stuff. Add a fill. And I'm going to look for something which is a little bit sweepy. So maybe there's something in here which looks like a swept surface. So again, just looking through. Is there anything? Let's explore in general. So, oh, creased, cell. Sometimes it's a little like paralyzed by choice, because I've got tons of stuff I can choose. If I just search for sweep, no. Brush. Oh, perfect. There you go. So that looks like someone's brushing a surface. So I'm going to just pull that into the normal, into the grey there. What if I invert it? Is it going to make more of a... Okay. So I'm going to invert it because I can see that brush a little bit more in there. I'm going to... Yeah. There we go. That looks nice. So I'm not trying to use that brush pattern for normal maps or anything like that. I'm just trying to use it in the roughness map just to give a sense of this has been buffed and polished with one of those like ride along buffer machines. Telling a bit of history. Telling a story. And then I'm going to export. So make sure that nothing is in... So make sure that anything here isn't going to be overridden. And I'm just going to, you know, file, export. I'm going to keep the exact same settings. Export selection. So then we should have those textures there. Now on this, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start naming these different, because obviously these are all called texture plane. What I'm going to do is start to name stuff so it's a little bit easier to understand what's going on. So this is my speckle floor. C for color, so I know it's my color map. That height map can go away. The metallic map, okay, I need that metallic map. So this is my speckle floor metallic. So M for metallic. This is my normal map, so speckle floor N for normal. Make sure I spell it right. Speckle floor roughness. Speckle floor R for roughness. So now I know exactly these are my speckle floor. Cool. So I'm going to go in there. I don't want to open it. So that's what my color map looks like. If anyone's interested. So I can click and drag that in there. Like that. Go back to Unreal. So what I'm going to do is just duplicate off these floors for now. So I'm going to duplicate them down. Come on. Play nice. Like that. And I'm going to inner materials, environment, new material. So I'm going to new material, and this is going to be M underscore speckle floor. And exactly what I did before, I'm just going to go to my content. Oh, I've not actually imported those out yet, have I? So let me just import those textures. So environment, floor. I'm just going to drag them into here. I don't think I need to be so organized that I have a separate folder for every type of texture. I'm just going to keep all my floor textures in here. There we go. And then just, yeah, drag those into my little shader window like that. Let me just change this because it's a heavy song. There we go. Deftones, nice. And we go back to the same thing. So what's our color map? That's our color map. This is our metallic map, I believe. Yep, so we're looking down here, just left here, it says speckle floor M. That's my metallic. This is my normal map, and this is my roughness map. There we go. So let's just plug them in. That's my color. This is my roughness. This is my metallic. And this is my normal. Get out of the way. There you go. And then we apply, just so we save it. I remember it. And then with these floors selected, what I can do is just go to texture, materials, environment, speckle floor, drag them in, and they'll get changed to the speckle floor material. So I can now. Does that feel alright? Does that feel nice? Does it have enough? Yep, that's. It's very, very shiny. That's like a glass floor, but maybe that's what we want. You know. Again, I'm not really bothered about it just yet. And I can make decisions. You know, is my texture as a speckle's too big? Does this look like a 4 meter by 4 meter section of flooring? Once I have this tiled out on a bigger surface, is that going to look like, you know, the wrong flooring? It's like an obvious like repeating pattern flooring. So what I can do, jump back to level. I'm going to select all the flooring in here and do the same thing. So this is, you know, this is all still the same flooring. There's nothing different. I'm not making a whole section, a new section of geometry just for this new bit of flooring, because all I'm going to do is literally replace, select all this, and pull that material into there. Now I can do this. This is where Unreal again is very, very cool, because I could create new geometry, basically duplicate off the geometry in the geometry tab in the file geometry folder, and then on those new master materials, those new master objects. So if I go to geometry environment, so I could go here and duplicate all these floor pieces here, and then on the new masters I could put the speckle floor, and then replace the speckle floor in here. I could do that, or I could, you know, the only thing I'm not doing here is manually dragging on a material per floor. That's what I'm not going to do. That's what's not happening. My computer's just done a thing. Are we still recording? We're still recording. Cool. So I'm going to grab this all jazz there, and I'm just going to materials. Just grab my speckle floor and drag that into the materials section there. There we go. So now they're all changed. And then I can play, and I can come over, see how it looks, see how it feels. You know, it looks okay. It looks nice. It looks suitably noisy enough. You know, it's not eye-catching. It's quite a simple floor. In fact, let me just move my player start to there. Player start, come with me. There we go. I have put some rectangle lights in the scene as well, just to light some areas. But yeah, that feels good. That feels nice. In a place like this as well, in a hotel, this probably wouldn't be in tiles, because what they might have literally done is skimmed this whole thing with plaster and scattered all this stuff, and then this might all literally be one solid slab of plaster that they've kind of done in place. Or if you want, you could make these into big, just like I've done here. You could make these into tiles, so they're literally bringing in these tiles of slabs, whatever you want to do. I think it's nice having this all in tiles here, and then having this be solid, because it just makes things a little bit different. You know, it changes stuff a little bit, changes it up. And then later on, I might make this to be carpet, because what we've not got now is any rough flooring. Everything's very shiny, and we've still not tweaked the materials for usage inside Unreal. Because again, Unreal sometimes likes to mess with the roughness map. It always likes to mess with the roughness map. But you know, that's nice. I've got some really nice stuff going on. And again, inside my attribute, my asset library, I've got some nice examples of my flooring. There we go. And you know, a lot of this stuff is not technically difficult to do. It's just using this non-destructive workflow. You know, you're bringing in an overall fill layer that's going to control your color, and then you add a mask and then add modifiers to that mask to control how that color is being seen. That's the important part. It's the experimentation. It's getting used to remembering fill layer, black mask, add a modifier. That's the thing that takes a little bit of time to get used to, just to get it under your fingers. And then you can experiment. You know, like making tiles, making things look a bit more randomized, making things, all these kind of things. Just tons of stuff we can do. And when it comes to stuff like walls, well, that's paint. What is paint? When you really look at paint, well, you can't really see where my hand's rubbing here, but I've got paint right next to me. When you really look at paint close up, what you're seeing is more normal map information than anything. This is a very rough wall. So mine here, I'm going to have very rough, maybe like eggshell, duck shell kind of walls. As long as it fits with my flooring. It's painted, it's like emulsioned. It's not marble or anything. You don't want too much shine. So that's going to be nice and rough. And it's going to be a flat colour, definitely. Like painted walls, if you were to remove all the normal information, it's just a flat wall. We're not putting blood anywhere. We're not putting dirt anywhere. This is a nice, clean environment. So the colour, like wall textures, are sometimes one of the easiest ones to do. And then you can think about maybe doing kind of more fancier stuff. Again, looking at your reference of Corinthia Hotel, Corinthia Budapest. And are there any examples of some more interesting walls going on? Or can you bring something to me that we can negotiate? Because I'm not unflexible about putting other stuff in there, as long as it fits to the vibe. What we don't want to have in there is like something super hyper modern and minimalist in something like the Corinthia Budapest, because they're not the same. We don't want anything which is stylistically off base. But if you bring an idea to me, I can either yay or nay it, or we can discuss it. I'm not going to poo-poo all the ideas. Just at the beginning, I just want things to... Also, my computer's doing things again. At the beginning, I just want people to be very strict with what they're looking at, just so we don't get off base and we start running away with ourselves. But yeah, that's making basic materials. And we're going to have more and more of these videos that are going to be like texturing things a little bit more... what I'm trying to say, a little bit more kind of intermediate, complex texturing. Obviously, when we texture objects, that's going to be done a certain way, and so on and so forth. And then we're going to have organics and all that kind of fun stuff. So we're going to be constantly going back and forth from Maya to Unreal to Painter to Maya to Unreal to Painter. It's going to be back and forth all the time. It's going to be great. So I'm going to end it there. I do really want you to go back and look at the initial basics of Substance Painter video. Because I go over in a lot more detail about stuff. I really explain the UI. I really explain the layers. I go into some of the functions. You can even see me do a little bit of like, I do some baking in that video. I even use generators to create information on a surface. I use some pen tool stuff to create stitching. You'll see a lot more in depth, but please watch that, because this, with that information, we go back to basics with this, and then we can start building some really awesome stuff. So yeah, I'm leaving it there. See you in the next one.